Hello everybody, this is Professor Skiles and I'm going to create this video to walk you through the African mask design and construction, which is lesson 7 assignment. I've got all my supplies in front of me. Here I have the complete steps printed out, and that is just for me because I like to have them in hard copy. I'm old school that way. Here I've got my 2 similarly sized pieces of paper. One is brown edged beige with some interesting texture on it, and the other is orange. I just happen to have these laying around in our theater supplies, and I thought it would make a nice combination for fall colors since we're entering into the Halloween season. I also have a pencil. I'm pretty brave. It has no eraser on it, so hopefully I don't make many mistakes. And we had absolutely no glue on campus that I could find, so I'm using some clear tape. And of course, I've got my scissors here. So that is my checklist of my materials needed. And step 1 says fold the light sheet in half, and I'm going to make the orange my light sheet. Now, if you remember elementary, you have taco fold, which is this way, and hot dog fold, which is this way. So in this case, this is hot dog fold. I'm gonna find my corners. Once I get my corners secured, I'm gonna mash it to the table, and with my thumbs create a nice strong crease. I'm even coming back with my fingernail here. Nice strong crease, and now I've got what will eventually be half and half of the mask. Take one of the light halves. Okay, and now I'm going to cut across the crease. I got ahead of myself there. I'm going to undo, and if I made a good enough crease, I can probably tear it as opposed to cutting it. This could create some interesting edges and texture. That's why I used my thumbnail to create a nice sharp crease. You can also do that using the scissors, but there we go, halvesies, and take one of the light halves and place it over the dark, just like the picture says. So I'm putting one right on top of the other. Make sure my corners line up. And once again, it's asking you to arrange things in portrait, which is tall, as opposed to landscape, which is wide. Next page. My first box is talking about the eyes. Draw a stylized eye about halfway down the light sheet of paper. Make it a basic shape that contains little detail. This is used to help express abstract qualities like nobility, integrity, and courage, fear, and humor. The shape you choose for your eye and the angle at which you set it will affect the expressive quality. All right, and I'm thinking jack-o'-lantern here completely for this time of year. And I am going to create a arch, an iris, an arch, and a completion. All right, so there is my eye. Cut out the eye shape, and then we're gonna flip it over and place what I cut out here over here. Now, in this case, these scissors are pretty big, so I'm gonna reach in my pocket here and get my pocket knife. Don't laugh at my baby pink plastic pocket knife. It was the cheapest one of Swiss Army that I could find on Amazon. And I'm just gonna use my scissors and very carefully start my cutting process. Alrighty, whoo, got it. All right, so I've got the eye shape, and I'm gonna get my corners back aligned, and then I'm going to see how the angle of my eye matches. And also, I can see my pencil lines on both sides here. Remember, I gotta flip it over on this side so that there's the symmetry. All right, so there's an eyeball. Next page, the nose. All right, the nose should stretch from just above the mouth to roughly halfway between the eyes and the bottom of the sheet. Once again, very simple, very stylized. Now, in this case, I'm gonna move it away so I don't mark on my paper. And I'm gonna think about pumpkin nose. I'm looking at my example over here. It's kind of pointed, but it's also giving me some options down here, more complex, and I'm gonna keep it pretty simple. So I'm gonna come down right between the eyes, kind of exactly where our nose is. And I'm gonna draw kind of a big old nose. It's actually gonna have a little bit of an indent here, and I don't want that. So I'm gonna come straight across there. And this one is much simpler, so I'm gonna use my larger scissors instead of my pink pocket knife. All right, and there's my nose. Now, remember, he was here. I'm gonna flip him right over and match things up. So I'm gonna come back to my paper. I'm gonna line up my corners again. I'm gonna make sure my eye is still in pretty good shape. And then I'm gonna put my nose right on the paper. And here's where I'm gonna use my first little tiny pieces of tape, and I'm gonna try to be fancy and make little tape loops and hide the tape underneath. Let's see how well that works. The nose is actually gonna be really handy because it's gonna give me a very exact placement for my orange piece of paper because I want my 2 points to line up. Now here, I can kind of take my pencil and say, my eye is pretty good. I just moved my other paper when I did that. My eye is and I just moved my eye. So let me get some tape here for my eye. Once again, a tape loop to kind of hide the tape, getting all fancy here. And I'm gonna stick it on the underside and see if I can kind of disguise it just a little bit. It's gonna stick out just the tiniest bit. Once again, pencil and pencil, flipping it over. And I'm gonna use my pencil here to know where my top is. And I think that's my top, and then I can use my pencil here as where's my bottom guide. So I get the angle correct, and I'm gonna smash it down. So now I've got an eye and a nose, and this piece is still floating free because I'm gonna need to cut out the next piece. All right, next page, the mouth. Okay, I'm still going for my jack-o'-lantern idea here, but I have to remember that whatever I cut out on this side is mirrored on this side. So I'm going to leave. I'm gonna draw two things here. I'm gonna draw my big smile, happy jack-o'-lantern. And then I'm gonna create some teeth in here, little vampire jack-o'-lantern. And I'll create one there so he has lower. Now I'm gonna cut out all of this. It's gonna take me a minute, so I'll probably skip over this part of the video. All right, that was a wee bit painful, but here we are. Let's again, I've got my nose. I'm gonna put my corners back. I'm gonna make sure my nose still lines up. I'm just a little bit off on my corners with my nose, but here we are. And then I'm gonna get some tape on the back of my mouth. I'm gonna see if I can do two pieces here to make sure it really gets stuck well. And I put them on the wrong side, the tape, so I'm gonna try to gently peel. Yay, it came off pretty well. This tape is old and not very sticky. Because once again, remember, I can see my pencil lines and I'm going to flip it over so that it's a mirror image. Alrighty, and I'm gonna line up those two pieces of the mouth and I'm gonna stick it down. All right, so now we've got the nose and the mouth aligned. The eyes are still in good shape. And I'm gonna turn my page. What is next? The face outline. All right, so from our unattached piece of paper, I'm gonna decide where the outline of the face goes. All right, could be oval, circular, rectangular, elongated, heart-shaped, animal-shaped, or human, any combination. Take the leftover background and we're gonna invert it. So make sure you don't cut all the way out to the edges. So pumpkins are generally pretty round. I had better not freehand this. I'm gonna give him just a little bit of forehead here. Little tiny edge there. Okay, so there's my pumpkin face. Get him lined up. And then remember, he was here, and now he's going to invert. Oh, he's gonna flip the right way, and he's gonna invert over here. And gonna have to be careful with that little corner right there to get everything lined up. Alrighty, take the leftover background, flip it over and align it. This will create the background. And then I'm assuming, that's always dangerous, that I should tape this down. But let me go ahead and look at what comes next. Step 6 is the decoration, the scarification, or the tattooing. And so we'll take out of this and then once again flip it. So I feel confident that I can tape this down. It's gonna take a lot of tape. Once again, if I was just using flat tape, this would go much faster. But 6 years as an elementary art teacher, and I'm a little particular about how my projects look. Finally, if I can get one skinny enough, right there in the middle. Right there. All right, once again, I'm gonna start in the corners. I'm gonna get my corner established. It's a little bit tough because my paper, my fancy beige paper with all the texture, is actually, it's a little hard to see against this tabletop. The beauty of using the tape is that I can scooch things around just a little bit as I need to. And peel this up gently because I've got a gap here. Smooth out my gap. Much better. All right. Now I've got the positive side and the negative side, and they're all still lining up. Yay. All righty. So now my decorations or my scarring, I think I'm going to keep this pretty simple. I'm just going to create one line in the cheek. Kind of free-handed. And once again, I flip it over. And using my pencil as a guide, I'm gonna figure out where it attaches over here. That seems a little low. Once again, the bottom. Yep, a little low to the bottom. And this one, let's see if I can get one tape loop on here. Of course, I've lost my placement. Sneak him out. So I'm gonna go back with my pencil. Where it attaches. My scarification. Step 7, hair. Okay, on the light background, draw a stylized design. So guess what I should not have done? I should not have taped this down. So that is my mistake. But you could cut hair here, and if I draw something and decide to cut it out, then you would flip it and do opposite. And then your final piece would be finishing. Once you've completed the arrangement of your design, glue all the shapes down. Okay, so I did a little extra there and did it as I went, which did cause a problem for the hair in the final piece. Now I'm going to get my main portion stuck down here. Go. Get it back aligned. Nose, mouth, top and bottom. And there we go. A pumpkin mask for the Halloween season. Not particularly African in nature. And then the last 3 pages are some interesting possibilities when you use different colored papers, multicolored papers, paper with texture on it, which you can see I've done here. Now, I might, just for interest's sake, come along and outline every single transition with a black marker, just to make it look a little sharper. There are all sorts of possibilities here. We don't want to ever crimp anybody's creative style, but that is the basics of building this African mask project.